The pirates. Oh no. Here I am, a helpless and virile man in the middle of his heat. Whatever shall I do? He states out loud, and there's some cursing in the earpiece under his toque. Look, Lou, I know you don't like being the bait, but for Christ's sake stop trying to piss off the man with a sniper rifle trained on your location. Miles answers and he groans. Why me again? He asks plaintively. He has a microphone in the fold of his turtleneck that picks up his voice easily enough. You're smaller, so baggy clothes hide your strength and weapons. You're also pretty much our close combat specialist, you kung fool. Now get back to looking like a bitch. Jake adds into the communication network. Why are we going after the fucking pimps first? Lou asks. The slavers, warring gangs, or sadistic witches seem to be a much higher priority in his opinion. Hell, the serial killer or monsters was a higher priority. Target of convenience, they're closest, Jake replies. Can we please have a little calm discipline? Franklin asks from nearby and into the network. It's all Lou can do to not kick the bastard who's both invisible and apparently in arm's reach. I'll discipline your calm, Lou grumbles in an annoyed tone. Drop the hostility. Remember you're a helpless little tret in over his head. Ryu both reminds and mocks him over the frequency. I'll show you over your head, he grumbles. Stick to the script. Miles orders over the comm. Look scared and vulnerable. Some sneaky little shit just ran off to rat you out. Franklin notes from the other side, and Lou once more suppresses the urge to hit the dumbass. Oh, woe is me. I am so defenseless and alone. Whatever is to be done. He deadpans out, and an invisible hand smacks into the back of his head. Oh, woe is me, he announces, turning around and swinging his arms out. For a second, Franklin can be spotted getting a backhand in the mouth before vanishing again. For fuck's sakes, you two. Miles groans as Lou smiles widely, wiping the bit of drool off his hand and noticing that he actually got a bit of a cut for slapping a man in the teeth. The smile turns to a happy little chuckle as he can straight up feel Franklin's pissed-off glare despite the invisibility. Well, looky here, a voice says, and Lou turns before blinking. Yes, he knew it was a pimp he was dealing with. But the image of the giant ant woman with huge breasts and huger hips and a massive pink furry coat with vertical white tiger stripes renders him utterly slack-jawed. Looks like this big mama's getting some fresh meat for the market. Ya look like you'll make mama some real money, and she collapses to the ground, revealing a disgusted-looking Franklin standing behind her. That was messed up. He mutters as Lou still struggles to find the words to describe the experience he just had. This fucking galaxy, Lou says to himself, and there are some sounds of agreement out of the comms as the rest of the crew starts poking their heads out of the firing positions they had hidden in nearby as Franklin holds onto the Drin woman's antenna in one hand. I got her stable locations. We going for the rescue first or the other pimp? Franklin says, letting go of the Drin and quickly going into her pockets. He pulls out a device from her coat before pulling out his pistol. Hold it. We'll give her victims the choice of judgment. It'll make us seem to have some focus on justice and boost our rep, Ryu says, and Franklin pauses before grinning. Fair enough, he says before glancing around. Anyone got some cuffs to tie her up with? I've got minimum equipment so I don't clink or rattle. Jake walks out and easily hefts the pimp while the air truck they procured for this descends. She's quickly wrapped up in both cuffs and duct tape and thrown in the back without any ceremony. We're getting the next hit out of the way, dropping off the bitches then saving their stables. Any arguments? Miles asks, and no one says a thing. All right then, let's get moving. The other one's territory is on the other side of the city. All of the men jump into the back as the truck and it soars over the city. All right, boys, we're looking for a Madam Horny, a Carib pimp. She's the heavier magic user of the two, and no matter how easy our first grab was, don't underestimate the second. This can still go massively wrong. Jake explains, and there are some snorts. Yay, yay. No one's afraid of Caribou Woman, but remember that her antlers act like an axiom focus, meaning deadly armed. Yay, right. This is a pimp, not some criminal warlord bitch. She's used to intimidating soft little men who've accomplished nothing in life and bribing everyone else. She's a flamboyant bully, meaning nothing more than a big target. And that's if she's one of the axiom-attuned Carib. There's another type whose antlers just fall out instead. Beck dismisses. Right, anyways, there's a part of the city called the Rustways. That's her stomping ground. Lou, will you? Miles begins. No. Lou answers, already fed up with being bait. Ryu, you're the next smallest. He immediately replies, and the Japanese soldier sighs. Fine, hand me the stupid hat, he says, and is past the toque which he hides his earpiece under before fiddling with the microphone and clipping it to the inside of his collar. Remember, like with Lou, we'll be nearby with all the weapons, Miles says as Ryu passes Lou his shotgun, and he takes it with a grin before going through a weapons check to make sure there's no surprises or silliness waiting for him. Yes, I know, although how did Miss Pink hear Miss Franklin? Don't the Drin have incredible senses in their antenna? Ryu asks, and the axiom adept of their group grins. That's because I'm doing more than fading out of sight. I'm attuning the outer layer of the resulting wavelength to the background axiom and wrapping it around the whole mess while also pulling in all my pheromones and other indicators of presence. The only things I'm not focusing on are sound and touch, but I can be quiet, and so long as I don't run into someone, then I'm fine. Franklin explains, and there's a pause. Really? I dumbed it down and everything. It's that we could understand it that shocked us, Beck remarks. We're coming up to Rustways. Franklin, you and Ryu need to go, Jake says, and Franklin nods before jumping out of the moving truck and is suddenly on the ground and safe. Ryu follows him, and there's the curious sensation of gravity dancing around him as Franklin prevents him from slamming into the ground and lets him down gently. Get moving. We've got a block before you need to put on a show. Franklin remarks, and Ryu nods as he focuses through the axiom totem wrapped around his finger. A curved blade appears in his hands, and he nods with a vicious grin. No samurai jokes. Ryu remarks, and Franklin grins even as he fades out of sight. Hi! Nin nin, he says, and Ryu just snorts at the stupidity. He then starts walking, shifting his stance from the combat-ready stance that's become his habit to something from his younger years. His nose up, a laser focus on something in his hand, and a fast-clip, no-nonsense walk. He's just missing a formal outfit instead of the sweater overtop the body armor. He adjusts his glasses and picks up the pace with his nose buried in his communicator. A quick text to let them know he's doing the busy student salaryman routine, and hopefully that's bait enough for the pimp. The response is that they've found some hints of her being not too far away, and are setting up Miles's sniping position, and setting up several ropes for the rest to rappel down at a moment's notice. Heel toe, heel toe. He quickly does a search on his communicator to see the history of this world. Technically, this place was in wild space, but the now degraded level of progression and population still qualified it for frontier space. There was a risk of the world losing representation in the Senate on Centris if the Senate actually cared enough to evaluate the world and properly classify it. Thankfully, their ignorance and wanton apathy are playing to the advantage of the crew. A sharp right, and he keeps marching, flicking through to a news article from a sensationalist website. They debate whether or not humans are actually real due to the sheer similarity between them and Tret, with one of the major arguments for it being the few female officers seen who quite clearly do not physically develop to the level of Tret women, coupled with the sheer amount of toxins and chemical weapons that the average human trooper devours with a gusto, and it has a solid argument. The other side of the article has some rather weak counter-arguments with them trying to claim that the women aboard the Dauntless are in fact unnaturally tall children and not another species of woman. He contemplates sending a text asking what, if anything, the other men know about what the women think about all this. It has to be confusing and distracting at the best of. He walks clean into an invisible wall and falls down upon himself. His communicator thankfully bounces onto his chest as he gasps in surprise and adjusts his glasses to their proper position. "Nani?" He asks to play up the out-of-his-depth part of his little deception, and there's a pair of clops behind him. He looks back and finds himself face to knee with soft gray fur-covered legs that end in cloven hooves. Then he looks up. Unfortunately, he can't see her face past her enormous breasts, but the antlers can be seen to either side. Madame Horny lives up to her name as the type to inspire her namesake, and living it. She's got nothing but a pale blue micro bikini and a big white fur coat on, and takes a step back before leaning over him. Her antlers are adorned with all sorts of little bangles that make her look like she's some kind of Christmas-themed stripper near the end of her act. "Oh, you poor little thing. I'm sorry about the hardened air, but I just couldn't." She freezes as Franklin reappears with his pistol pressed to the side of her head. "All right, boys, we've got her. This crumbling city's pimps are under our control," Franklin says. "And stop drawing on the axiom. I can see it, and if you don't stop, I shoot." He threatens her, and she goes still. No. This can't be happening, this isn't happening," she mutters to herself as she starts to shake. Franklin gives Ryu an odd look, who shrugs. Neither expected her to break so quickly. "Please no. I need to be there for them. I don't know who you are, but surely men understand that other men need protection." "Keep talking," Ryu tells her, and she blinks. "You don't know?" she asks. "Lady, our species evolved in cruel space. Men dominate there," Franklin says as Lou bounces down and is there in a hurry. "What's going on?" Lou asks. "That's what we're trying to figure out. Big Mama was flesh peddling, but it seems her compatriot," Ryu begins. "I am not like that wretch. She abuses and enslaves the men she finds. I protect mine. I'm more of a mother than she'll ever be." "Then in that case, you won't mind coming with us. We're taking you and your rival to our compound and then rescuing both stables of boys. If you're actually like a mother to your boys, then they'll vouch for you," Jake says as he walks up with his heavy machine gun vaguely pointed at her and finger on the trigger even as it's held firmly by straps. She eyes the massive weapon warily, as would anyone not clearly on the same team as the man toting a monster that big around with ease. "Oh, okay, fine. If you want to judge me based on how my boys think of me, then this is just a formality," she says, standing tall. "If she's cooperating, then that's all the easier. We're here for justice and order, not blind madness and bloodlust," Miles says as he gets down to their level. Cy brings the truck around and she looks surprised to see Big Mama both in the back and alive. "Tell us where the boys are. If they're well taken care of and actually vouch for you, then everything will be fine." "They're with their wives. You boys really aren't local, aren't you?" Madame Horny asks, and at Miles's raised eyebrow she smiles. "It's dangerous around here. Big Mama has a bunch of drugged-up victims. I am a matchmaker and bodyguard for mine. They're like children to me," she says. "Oh, really? Well, it'll be interesting to get their side of the story. But if you're being so kind as to cooperate, then come along now," Miles says, and she nods. She climbs into the truck alongside everyone else who keeps at least one weapon trained on her and Big Mama at all times. As she realizes they're heading to the Vecchus compound, she goes into a panic until Ryu conjures his hard light sword and holds it up to her. "The Veeks are dead. We're in charge," Miles says to her shock. "Miles? Is that you and your boys? Where did you go?" Hani demands. Apparently, she's on comm duty. You remember how we promised to help make the world a better place to rule? Miles asks her, and she nods. There's no point explaining much to her. She's one of the bridge crew, dim but diligent in her work. Well, we're starting with Mainport City, then moving outwards. We each have our own little plans, and today we're working on Jake's, helping the main city. After we deal with the 2 girls we're bringing in, we're going to start rebuilding and funding schools and recreation centers. You know, the sort of things that get people to really like you. Miles explains, and Hani blinks in surprise. I have to tell Captain Lilpaw, she says, and Miles nods. We're going to Landing Bay 73, he says, and she nods.